Welcome to Whispered Legends, where history's most enigmatic tales come to life. Tonight, we delve into the shadows of one of America's darkest nights, the assassination of President Abraham Lincoln. Join us as we explore the motivations, execution, and aftermath of this tragic event that forever changed the course of history. The historical context. The year is 1865. The American Civil War, a brutal conflict that tore the nation apart, is nearing its end. For 4 long years, brother has fought against brother, and the nation has been engulfed in a war that has tested its very foundation. The Confederacy is collapsing under the relentless pressure of Union forces, and the Union, led by President Abraham Lincoln, is on the brink of an historic victory. But with the war's impending conclusion comes a growing fear among the Confederacy's most fervent supporters, fear of defeat, fear of change, and fear of what a reunited America would mean under Lincoln's leadership. These fears festered in the hearts of those who could not imagine a world where slavery was abolished, where the South was no longer its own entity, and where Lincoln's vision of a unified nation prevailed. Abraham Lincoln, the 16th President of the United States, had become a symbol of the Union's resolve. His leadership through the war, marked by his deep empathy, unwavering determination, and strategic brilliance, had kept the Union together during its darkest hours. His Emancipation Proclamation in 1863 had transformed the war from a battle to preserve the Union into a moral crusade to end slavery. His vision for reconciliation, a compassionate approach aimed at healing the deep wounds of the nation, was admired by many. Yet for all his virtues, Lincoln was loathed by others. Among those who despised Lincoln was a man named John Wilkes Booth, an actor and Confederate sympathizer who believed that by striking down Lincoln, he could revive the Confederate cause and become a hero of the South. Booth's hatred was not merely political, it was personal, born from his belief that Lincoln was a tyrant who had destroyed the way of life he held dear. John Wilkes Booth and the Conspiracy. John Wilkes Booth was born in 1838 into a prominent theatrical family, known for their performances on stages across America. He was charismatic, handsome, and well known in the theater community. His good looks and dramatic flair made him a favorite among audiences. But behind his charming facade lay a deep-seated hatred for Lincoln and the Union. As the war dragged on and Confederate defeats mounted, Booth became increasingly radicalized. He was incensed by Lincoln's policies, particularly the emancipation of slaves, which he saw as an affront to the Southern way of life. In early 1865, Booth hatched a plan to kidnap Lincoln and deliver him to the Confederate forces, hoping to use the president as a bargaining chip to negotiate the South's independence. This plan, though daring, was fraught with logistical challenges and ultimately failed to materialize. However, as the Confederacy's fortunes waned and the war drew to a close, Booth's plot evolved into something far more sinister: assassination. Booth recruited a group of co-conspirators, each with a specific role in a larger plan that targeted not just Lincoln, but also Vice President Andrew Johnson and Secretary of State William Seward. The goal was to decapitate the Union government in one fell swoop, plunging the nation into chaos. Booth believed that this would be enough to reignite the flames of war and give the South a second chance at victory. It was a desperate and delusional scheme, driven by a fanatical sense of duty to a cause that was already lost. The assassination at Ford's Theater. April 14, 1865, Good Friday. The war was nearly over and the nation was beginning to breathe a collective sigh of relief. President Lincoln, who had endured the pressures of leading the country through its most devastating conflict, was looking forward to a peaceful evening. He and his wife, Mary Todd Lincoln, decided to attend a performance of the play Our American Cousin at Ford's Theater in Washington, D.C. It was a rare night out for the president, who had been weighed down by the burdens of war for years. The couple was joined by Major Henry Rathbone and his fiancée, Clara Harris. Unbeknownst to Lincoln, John Wilkes Booth was already inside the theater, lurking in the shadows. Armed with a .44 caliber Derringer pistol and a knife, Booth waited for the right moment to strike. He was familiar with the layout of Ford's Theater, having performed there on several occasions, and he knew exactly how and when to make his move. At approximately 10:15 p.m., as the play reached one of its funniest lines, "Don't know the manners of good society, eh? Well, I guess I know enough to turn you inside out, old gal, you sock-dologizing old man trap." The audience erupted in laughter. It was the perfect cover. Booth quietly entered the presidential box, unnoticed by the guards, who had relaxed their vigilance due to the light-hearted atmosphere. He aimed his pistol at the back of Lincoln's head and pulled the trigger. The shot rang out, but the laughter and applause masked the sound. Lincoln slumped forward, mortally wounded. Major Henry Rathbone, who was in the box with the Lincolns, attempted to apprehend Booth, but was slashed with a knife in the struggle. Booth then leaped from the box to the stage, catching his spur on the American flag and breaking his leg in the fall. Despite his injury, Booth stood up, faced the stunned audience, and shouted, "Sic semper tyrannis," thus always to tyrants, the state motto of Virginia. The crowd, still in shock, watched as Booth hobbled off the stage and escaped through the back of the theater. Outside, a horse was waiting for him, and he quickly mounted it, riding off into the night. The aftermath and manhunt. The theater erupted in chaos as the audience and actors realized what had just occurred. People screamed and rushed towards the exits, while others tried to reach the presidential box to assist the president. Lincoln was carried across the street to the Peterson House, where doctors worked desperately to save him, but the bullet had done its damage. The shot had penetrated Lincoln's skull and lodged in his brain. Despite the best efforts of the doctors, it was clear that the president's condition was dire. Abraham Lincoln, the great emancipator, died at 7:22 a.m. the following morning, April 15, 1865. Mary Todd Lincoln, who had been by his side throughout the night, was inconsolable. The nation had lost its leader at a moment when his guidance was most needed. News of Lincoln's assassination spread like wildfire, plunging the nation into mourning. Black mourning ribbons were draped across buildings, and people gathered in public squares to grieve collectively. Meanwhile, Booth, despite his injury, fled Washington on horseback, accompanied by co-conspirator David Harold. The largest manhunt in American history was launched, with Union soldiers scouring the countryside for the assassins. Booth and Harold sought refuge in the Maryland countryside, finding brief sanctuary at the homes of sympathizers and in the wilderness. But they were soon forced to keep moving as the net tightened. The manhunt involved thousands of soldiers, detectives, and local volunteers, all driven by a mix of anger and determination to bring Lincoln's killer to justice. After 12 days on the run, Booth was finally cornered in a tobacco barn on the Garrett Farm in Virginia. Union soldiers surrounded the barn, and after a tense standoff, the barn was set on fire in an attempt to flush him out. Booth, his leg now badly infected, refused to surrender, preferring death to capture. He was ultimately shot by Sergeant Boston Corbett, who claimed that Booth had been raising his gun to fire. Booth died on the scene, his final words reportedly being, "Useless, useless." His body was later transported to Washington, where it was secretly buried in an unmarked grave, far from the public eye. The impact of Lincoln's assassination. Abraham Lincoln's assassination was not just the death of a president. It was a shattering blow to a nation already torn apart by civil war. Lincoln had been a symbol of hope, unity, and the possibility of reconciliation. His death left the country in a state of shock and grief, and the task of reconstruction. The process of rebuilding the South and integrating freed slaves into American society was left to his successor, Andrew Johnson, who lacked Lincoln's vision and political skill. Johnson's approach to Reconstruction was far more lenient towards the South, leading to significant tensions between him and Congress, and ultimately resulting in his impeachment. The assassination also had profound consequences for the South. Instead of rekindling the Confederate cause, as Booth had hoped, it solidified the North's resolve to complete the Union's victory and impose harsher conditions on the defeated South. Booth's actions led to the execution of 4 of his co-conspirators, including Mary Surratt, the first woman to be executed by the United States government. The trials and executions of the conspirators were highly publicized and served as a grim reminder of the consequences of treason. Over time, Lincoln became an enduring symbol of American ideals: freedom, equality, and the enduring struggle to build a more perfect union. His assassination, a tragic chapter in American history, is a reminder of the cost of division and the power of leadership in the face of national crisis. The image of a nation draped in mourning, the somber processions, and the deep sense of loss felt by millions all contributed to the mythologizing of Lincoln as not just a leader, but as a martyr for the cause of liberty. Legacy and reflection. Today, Abraham Lincoln is remembered not just for how he died, but for how he lived, for his speeches that still resonate, for his courage in the face of unprecedented challenges, and for his unwavering belief in the United States of America. His legacy endures in the monuments, in the stories we tell, and in the principles that continue to guide the nation he fought so hard to preserve. The Lincoln Memorial, standing tall in Washington, D.C., is a testament to his enduring impact, visited by millions who seek to connect with the ideals he championed. As we reflect on this tragic event, let us also remember the lessons it imparts: the importance of unity, the dangers of hatred, and the enduring power of hope. In Lincoln's words spoken during his second inaugural address just weeks before his death, "With malice toward none, with charity for all, with firmness in the right as God gives us to see the right, let us strive on to finish the work we are in, to bind up the nation's wounds." These words, born from the heart of a leader who sought to heal a divided nation, continue to echo through the ages. Thank you for joining us on this journey through history's shadows. If you found this story as captivating as we do, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. This is Whispered Legends, where the past is always present.